Europe's economic powerhouse. The nation that once threw open its doors to the world, now pulling off one of the fastest immigration reversals in modern history. Germany, the country that told the planet, "Wir schaffen das." We can do this. But a decade later, it quietly decided it couldn't. In 2023, the numbers were staggering. 329,000 asylum claims, a bureaucracy stretched to breaking point, and deportation orders piling up faster than they could be enforced. By mid-2025, first-time asylum applications had been cut in half. Border crossings collapsed. Deportation rates spiked. The same country once mocked for its humanitarian naivete had become Europe's most efficient deportation machine. This wasn't luck. It was design. Germany had quietly built a six-pillar system that re-engineered how a democracy could control migration, without rewriting its constitution, without quitting the EU, and without declaring a crisis. This is Germany, a country of over 84 million people that has long been seen as one of the strongest economies in the world, consistently ranking near the top in industrial production, social welfare systems, and standard of living. It was also seen as one of the happiest nations in the world, but this is dropping year by year, with a major decline in youth happiness. In 2024, Germany fell to 24th place in the World Happiness Report, down from 16th in the previous recording. So, what has gone so wrong? Welcoming more than 1 million migrants during the 2015-2016 refugee crisis alone and continuing to attract hundreds of thousands annually, Germany has also become a magnet for migration. In 2023, Germany granted residency to approximately 350,000 new immigrants, pushing the foreign-born population to historic highs. But as of 2025, Germany is now tackling what many are saying is its biggest problem: illegal immigration. In a striking shift that has sent shockwaves through Europe, Germany is intensifying its crackdown on immigration, rejecting more asylum applications, deploying increased police forces at its borders, and implementing stricter border controls. Step by step, the country is expanding its capacity to turn away migrants and conduct pushbacks, raising legal and ethical questions along the way. While many critics argue that these measures undermine international asylum laws, many believe they are a necessary response to climbing security concerns and rising migration pressures. As Germany moves further down this controversial path, the question rises: why is one of Europe's most influential nations suddenly declaring war on immigration? And what does this mean for the country's future? Germany's relationship with immigration spans several decades, shaped by economic needs, geopolitical events, and evolving social attitudes. Historically, the country's strategic location in Central Europe, bordered by 9 countries and serving as a major economic hub, has made it a natural gateway for migrants from Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and World War II era. Germany was in ruins. Millions of Germans were forced from their homes, while the devastating loss of life left entire communities shattered. And as a result, the country faced labor shortages as it attempted to rebuild its economy. To address this, West Germany launched the Gastarbeiter, guest worker program in the 1950s and 1960s, inviting millions of workers, primarily from countries in the Mediterranean region and later from Turkey. Initially, a large influx came from Italy, followed by workers from Spain, Portugal, Greece, and Yugoslavia. After 1961, Turkish citizens became the largest group of guest workers, with many coming from rural areas. These workers played a crucial role in Germany's Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle, helping to rebuild industries and infrastructure. Even after their contracts ended, many stayed, contributing to the economy through labor, entrepreneurship, and cultural diversity. Over the decades, migrants have continued to enrich Germany's workforce and society. They have established businesses and filled labor gaps in sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, and services. Today, migrants make up roughly 18% of the population, and their economic contributions are widely recognized as integral to Germany's prosperity. Beyond economics, migrants have contributed significantly to German culture, bringing new cuisines, festivals, and perspectives that have become a natural part of the country's way of life. For much of its post-war history, Germany maintained a relatively open stance towards migration, especially during periods of economic growth. Its guest worker programs, legal pathways for family reunification, and integration policies highlighted the country's recognition of migration as vital to its growth. While debates over integration emerged, the main focus remained on the benefits of openness and the value of migrants to the country's development. However, This openness has shifted dramatically in recent years. Annually, by 2023, the country's population reached over 84 million, with around 300,000 new residents added that year. However, this influx has also sparked concerns, particularly when, in that same year, the German federal police reported a 33% increase in illegal border crossings, with the majority of migrants coming from Syria, Turkey, and Afghanistan. A record 1.2 million people applied for asylum in Germany between 2015 and 2016. In the city of Oberhausen, local government figures show that in 2010, 22% of people in Oberhausen were either not born as German citizens or had one immigrant parent. By 2016, that figure had risen to 28%, and by 2023 was up to 37%. Across the country as a whole, the immigrant population rose from 16.9 million in 2023 to 17.4 million in 2024, and tensions have been rising as a result. In July 2024, the Critic reported that Germany registered 5.5% more crimes in 2023 than 2022. The number of suspects rose 7.3%. 41% were foreigners, an increase of 17.8%, and asylum seekers made up 18% of the offenders. They added that although they make up only 2.5% of the population, asylum seekers made up 13.1% of all SA suspects in 2021. They also noted that in 2023, 351,000 asylum seekers entered Germany, more than the population of Germany's former capital, Bonn. Most of these men have no German skills, little education, no experience with alcohol, and no experience interacting with women not related to them. They are no longer constrained by their families, and many live jammed into crowded refugee shelters. While crime has been climbing in Germany, and it can't entirely be attributed to a wave of migrants, in 2017, a poll found 23% of Germans felt unsafe in public spaces. By 2024, the figure had nearly doubled to 40%. Following a security report in 2024, it was found that many Germans are feeling increasingly threatened, particularly by continuing high levels of migration and the rise of extremist groups. And they're also worried about the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. According to the authors of the report, 48% of German citizens are convinced that crime in Germany has increased significantly as a result of the influx of refugees. This belief is also well documented for violent and sexual offenses. What laws, tactics, and controversies turned Germany from Europe's open door into its most fortified checkpoint? And more importantly, can any other country actually copy it? Because if Germany really did solve the migration crisis, then the rest of Europe is already studying the playbook. Let's run through the numbers quickly. As we said, in 2023, Germany received approximately 329,000 asylum claims. By 2024, that number had fallen to around 230,000 first-time applications, a 30% drop that sent shockwaves through European policy circles. But that was just the beginning. By the first quarter of 2025, applications had crashed even further. In June, the number of new applications was less than 7,000, a 60% decline from June 2024 numbers, and 70% from 2 years ago. And according to Euronews, this figure set a new record for the lowest monthly application submitted since March 2013. So what was in Germany's toolkit? Well, their approach wasn't based on a single policy change, but more so a coordinated, multi-pronged strategy that addressed every aspect of the immigration system. Think of it as a 6-pillar framework that systematically removed pull factors while seriously increasing enforcement capacity. Let's break them down. Pillar 1, total border control. Starting in October 2023, Germany made a decision that would have been unthinkable just years earlier. They reinstated border checks at all their land borders, not just the Austrian frontier that had been under scrutiny for years. We're talking about comprehensive controls across their perimeter with Austria, Czechia, Poland, Switzerland, and later extending to France, the Benelux countries, and Denmark. German police were empowered to turn people away immediately at trains, autobahns, and buses. The visual impact was immediate. Suddenly, crossing into Germany required actual documentation and investigation, something that hadn't been the case since the height of the Schengen Agreement's implementation. The psychological impact was huge. Word travels fast in migrant communities, and the message was clear. Germany was no longer an easy entry point into Europe's heartland. Pillar 2, the Return Improvement Act. On February 27, 2024, Germany passed legislation that fundamentally changed the deportation game. The Return Improvement Act wasn't just another bureaucratic reform. It was a complete overhaul of how Germany handles removals. The most significant change? Pre-deportation detention was extended from 10 days to 28 days. This might sound like a minor administrative tweak, but it solved one of the biggest problems in deportation policy: people simply disappearing before their removal could be executed. But the act went further. It gave authorities broader search powers, allowing them to search both persons and accommodation tied to removal proceedings. It also introduced entry and residence bans for those caught with fake papers, even after refusal at the border. The effect was immediate and measurable. Fewer people were able to run away before deportation, and authorities finally had the time and tools needed to execute removals effectively. Pillar 3, the payment card revolution. One of Germany's most innovative approaches was the introduction of the Bezahlkarte in November 2023, a payment card system that replaced cash benefits for asylum seekers. This wasn't just about administrative efficiency. It was a direct attack on what policymakers identified as pull factors. The card system limited ATM withdrawals, restricted remittances to home countries, and eliminated what officials called cash leakage, the phenomenon where cash benefits were being used for purposes other than direct support of asylum seekers within Germany. Now, implementation was patchy across different states by mid-2025, and this became a source of ongoing political debate. But where the system was active, officials reported significant reductions in what they termed irregular cash flows and more standardized support delivery. It sent yet another clear message. Germany was moving away from unconditional cash support toward a more controlled, monitored system of assistance. Pillar 4, safe country fast tracking. Germany's reclassification of Georgia and Moldova as safe countries of origin was a masterclass in bureaucratic efficiency. By labeling these countries as safe, Germany could process claims under accelerated procedures, making decisions in just 7 days rather than months or years that cases used to take. The numbers here are big. Georgia's asylum recognition rate in Germany was approximately 0.3%. That means virtually no Georgian asylum claims were being approved anyway, but they were still clogging up the system for months. By fast-tracking these cases, Germany could clear backlogs while sending a clear deterrent signal to potential asylum seekers from these countries. This approach wasn't limited to Georgia and Moldova. It represented a fundamental shift toward data-driven country classifications that prioritized processing efficiency. Pillar 5, deportation at scale. Perhaps the most controversial but effective element of Germany's strategy was the massive upscale of deportations and Dublin transfers. In 2024, Germany executed 20,084 deportations, a 25% increase over 2023. On top of that, they processed 5,827 Dublin transfers, moving asylum cases back to other EU states where applicants had first entered European territory. But here's where it gets really interesting. Germany partnered with Frontex to run charter flights, including innovative double destination runs that could deport people to 2 different countries in a single flight. This kind of operational efficiency had never been seen before in European immigration enforcement. The combined tally of removals, returns, turnbacks, and Dublin transfers reached 67,571 in 2024, the highest number since 2016. This wasn't just policy. It was industrial-scale immigration enforcement. Pillar 6, legal migration channels. Crucially, Germany didn't just crack down on asylum abuse. They expanded legal migration channels for skilled workers at the same time. The reworked skilled immigration framework and the introduction of an opportunity card system aimed to funnel economic migration into legal pathways, reducing pressure on the asylum system. This dual approach, work visas yes, asylum abuse no, became vital to Germany's messaging. They weren't anti-immigration. They were pro-legal immigration and anti-abuse of asylum systems. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. Because implementing these 6 pillars was one thing, but would they actually work? Remember, we're talking about Germany, a country that had tried plenty of immigration reforms for years with limited success. Skeptics were everywhere. Critics argued that border controls would create chaos and that detention extensions would face court challenges. Even within Germany's own government, there were doubts. How do you suddenly reverse decades of migration patterns? How do you convince people who've already made the dangerous journey to Europe that Germany is no longer their destination of choice? Let's break down exactly what Germany achieved and which populations were most affected. Syrian asylum claims dropped by 50%. Afghan claims fell by 42%. Turkish claims plummeted by 61%. These weren't marginal adjustments. These were fundamental shifts in migration patterns affecting some of the largest asylum-seeking populations in Europe. But perhaps the most telling statistic is this. In 2024, 33,717 planned deportations still failed. How they did it is a whole different story. The implementation details show a level of administrative and political coordination that most countries have a tough time achieving. The border check expansion wasn't just about posting guards at crossings. The question is, can the country's model be copied by other European nations? Or was this a unique achievement that depended on Germany's specific circumstances? Well, the answer is both yes and no, and the details matter. Yes, the core tools are replicable. Border checks, detention extensions, safe country classifications, benefit restrictions, and scaled-up deportations are all policy instruments that other countries can and are beginning to adopt. Germany's size, central location, and administrative capacity made it possible to deploy border checks quickly. A nation such as Estonia or Luxembourg lacks the capacity to abruptly enact extensive border controls at every point of entry. These legal challenges represent ongoing constraints on how far enforcement can be pushed. However, one of the most important questions about Germany's apparent success is whether the reduction in asylum applications represents genuine policy effectiveness or simply reflects broader European and global trends that would have happened anyway. German policy changes may not have been as significant as external geopolitical factors, such as changes in routes from Turkey, Balkan enforcement, or conditions in origin countries, as shown by data from the European Union Asylum Agency, which shows that EU-wide asylum applications started to decline around October 2024. This is a fair critique, and the timing is suspicious. In Germany's capital, Berlin, based on data provided by Berlin's authorities, the number of attacks against migrants, asylum seekers, refugees, and the properties where they live have shown a marked increase. In 2023, there were no attacks on accommodation and 32 attacks reported against migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. So it's easy to see why Germany is now declaring war on immigration in 2025. But how are they going about it? In May 2025, the Interior Minister, Alexander Dobrindt, announced the cancellation of a 2015 instruction that had previously allowed entry for undocumented third country nationals, a significant policy shift aimed at reducing irregular migration. Dobrindt explained, "We are not going to close the borders, but we are going to control the borders more strictly, and this stronger control of the borders will also lead to a higher number of rejections." But how do Germans feel about the move? A study by pollsters YouGov, conducted for DPA, suggests 75% support the move by the new Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt, with 50% fully in favor and 25% somewhat backing the measures. Only 16% reject the new regulation, while 9% did not specify their opinion or said that they did not know. For the poll, around 2,200 eligible voters in Germany were surveyed between May 9th and 12th, 2025. While this shows broad approval, will the stricter measures work? And will there be any consequences? Germany's recent policies are part of a larger European trend where migration politics have become increasingly controversial. Outside of this, it is still a little too early to determine whether Germany's intensified immigration controls will achieve their end goal results. The effectiveness of these measures remains to be seen as authorities continue to implement and adjust their policies. However, their implications are already rippling across Europe. For instance, The Spectator reported that Germany's crackdown is likely to increase pressure on Brussels to adopt a tougher stance on migration at the EU level, as far-right parties across Europe continue to gain electoral ground by promising stricter border policies. Other national leaders are increasingly pushing the European Union to follow. This growing political momentum suggests that Germany's actions could serve both as a catalyst and a model, potentially reshaping migration policies across the continent, whether for better or worse. To sum it up, Germany's evolving policies serve as either a blueprint or a cautionary tale for its European neighbors. Its recent measures demonstrate how a major economy can tighten border controls between rising migration challenges, potentially influencing other nations to follow. On the other hand, the social and political repercussions of such policies, diplomatic tensions, legal controversies, and public debates, serve as lessons for countries contemplating similar strict measures. Essentially, Germany's new policies exemplify a broader European and global debate, balancing security and humanitarian obligations, sovereignty, and international commitments. As Germany continues to reshape its approach, other nations are watching closely.